top low level, and we rebutted that.
Senator said he was informed the United States has suspended low-level reconnaissance flights over Cuba and is using special, quote, electronic ear, unquote, planes to listen in from outside Cuban territory. Goldwater, an Air Force Reserve Major General, said in an interview that he was told the low-level flights were discontinued February 9th, 3 days after Secretary Robert McNAMARA's television reports on the Cuban military situation. An informed government source said this was an error. The source said low-level flights were being carried out as the need for them arose, etc. Goldwater, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, said that, quote, electronic airplanes, unquote, are equipped with sensitive devices able to register details of what is going on in Cuba down to the point of detecting a generator in operation. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I'm sure it's...
There isn't any truth that I know of, but he shouldn't be talking about electronic gear.
Yeah. But I mean, that's fantastic. Somebody, if it's true, it's a bad security thing.
It is indeed. I'll check on that part. I saw the first part of the story. I hadn't seen the electronic gear. I talked to Mac about the statement that he made about low-level flights and our rebuttal to it, and I suggested to Mac that if this continues, we ought to run a low-level flight if necessary just to refute him.
Yeah.
We could pick out an isolated target and run it against that.
Yeah, right. Well, the electronic stuff, is there some new electronic?
No, I'm certain there isn't, Mr. President. I'll look into that. I haven't...
Good. The other thing is the story of Mark Watson's in the Baltimore Sun about that flying over those carriers.
Yes.
Now, he makes the point... no, it's Paul Ward in the Baltimore Sun. Diplomatic authorities here, this is Washington today, to link the latest 4 Soviet flights over United States naval vessels over the current Kremlin campaign against the projected NATO multilateral force, noting the Kennedy administration recently has advertised a preference for using Polaris armed service ships instead of submarines to make up such a force. They suggested 1. The Soviet reconnaissance flights over the aircraft carriers Kitty Hawk, Enterprise, Princeton, and Forrestal, which Senator McNamara were designed only in part to collect military intelligence data. 2. That 4 Soviet overflights staged between January 27th and February 23rd in a way McNamara called, quote, a pattern, unquote, also were designed to lessen the little enthusiasm the United States NATO allies have shown for multilateral nuclear force, composed of surface vessels, by reminding them, etc., that they had long-range bombers capable of hunting down such ships. Diplomatic authorities here stressed in that connection McNamara's notation that Soviet aerial surveillance had been chronic and hitherto conducted only by short and medium, so on.
We have a reply to that, which proved very effective with von Hassel.
Yeah.
That the surface ships carrying Polaris missiles would be merchantmen, not easily recognized as these carriers were. Furthermore, that they would be lying in the coastal waters and in the bays and channels of the Western European coast, and quite a different situation. We'll get in touch with Watson and give him the same story.
Yeah, well, this was Ward. I guess, I don't know whoever he is. But the only thing is, I was wondering, have we given, I suppose we have, Merchant the sort of most up-to-date military thinking?
Yes, we have indeed. He has Admiral Lee with him, as a matter of fact.
What is our private naval opinion about the ability of the Russians to get these ships?
The private naval opinion as to the ability of the Soviets to follow the merchant shipping is that it would be almost impossible.
Yeah.
And that were they to follow the merchant shipping, we would be aware of it. We can interpose our submarines between the Soviet craft and the Polaris carrying merchant shipping, and we would thereby be aware of the Soviet attempt to follow them, and this in itself would be warning of some possible Soviet attempt against the merchant shipping.
You mean if they picked where if the air started to follow them all?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I would, but anyway.
I think we have effective answers to the Ward-type claim. As a matter of fact, in talking to von Hassel about it, he seemed to completely accept our explanation of why the surface craft were relatively invulnerable in European-type waters. Now, when you get off the coast of China, that's something else again. This is the argument we're trying to use to establish our requirement for Polaris submarines and the European requirement for a surface fleet.
Yeah. Well, in addition, if you took the idea that you'd give up all surface ships, if you could get the idea that they all could be caught, you'd certainly give up all carriers. We wouldn't be building any carriers if we thought they were so easy to detect and destroy.
That's right. Frankly, I don't know how the Soviets detected these carriers. I've asked the Navy to look into it. They have an easy explanation that the Soviets are aware of the passage of the carriers through the Straits of Gibraltar and of the sailing of the carriers from Norfolk. I don't think it's quite that easy, and therefore we're analyzing in great detail the path of these carriers, the speed of the carriers, and the ways in which the Soviets might have picked them up. I just don't have an answer to it at the moment.
Okay, fine.
I'll follow it, and we'll also get in touch with Ward.
We might take a look at whoever that Goldwater's latest thing about the electronic ear.
I will
Okay,
do so.
thanks.
Thank you.
Hello.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
on the 2 points you raised this morning, I talked to General Carroll of DIA, who says we have no new equipment on our electronic intelligence aircraft. It's simply the typical electronic intelligence equipment, which is sensitive to electronic emanations and perhaps could pick up generators associated with SAM sites, for example. In any case, it's a violation of security. So I called General LeMay, who is a close friend of Goldwater's, and I asked him to get in touch with Goldwater and handle it directly. And we're also going to try to get a senator on the Armed Services Committee to say in the Senate that this is a violation of security.
Very good.
Handle it that way. Now, secondly, on the Ward article, we will brief Ward as well as other newspaper correspondents on a background basis as to the difference between maintaining surveillance over a fleet, including the carriers and the other escort ships, on the one hand, following a known and prescribed course between the U.S. and Gibraltar, versus maintaining surveillance over merchant ships using the coastal waters, channels, bays, harbors, etc. of Western Europe. I think we can stop that story that way.
I noticed. I read the Manchester Guardian. They had a story about this problem. The fact that the United States itself does not use surface vessels for Polaris indicates that they're not as good. Of course.
We've got a real problem with Great Britain. We have to let them use some of that because of their decision to use Polaris submarines. But as far as Western Europe is concerned, we have a good, strong argument as to why they should use surface ships and we use submarines.
Of course, if we were arguing submarines, they'd be around saying that they have to buy them in the United States and they get too much control from the United States.
And the two strong arguments, therefore, in favor of surface ships for Western Europe are, one, they can build them, and two, their waters are entirely different than the waters we have to operate our subs in around the world.
Yeah.
And these two arguments, I've used them on Von Hassel, and Admiral Lee is with Livy Merchant and using them in the North Atlantic Council. We talked to Lee by telephone yesterday, and he says that they're acceptable.
All right. Good. Okay, fine.
Thank you.